Josh Heupel might have to do something he hasn't this season, and that's play young wide receivers. And if we're being honest, it might be his only option. I'm Paige Dauer. This is the sports page on full disclosure. I say only option for a couple of reasons, but maybe most obviously or the most important is one you have to consider Chris Brazzell Jr. He's your most experienced, most veteran player within that wide receiver room. And through the first 2 weeks of fall camp, he's not been involved at all. At best, he's doing individual work. On Saturday for the first scrimmage, he wasn't a participant, but maybe things are turning up a little bit. Probably top 5 best news that you could get out of fall camp this season is the fact that actually Chris Brazzell Jr. was very much involved in the day 1 of week 3 fall camp. He was in the warm-ups and stretching with the team. He also, trotted out to the outdoor field with his teammates, and he was able to get some reps in. He did some drills at half speed, to put it lightly. So getting him in the mix is absolutely huge for this team. Again, he's your only veteran player. He's your only player from last year's team that had legitimate playing time. And when we consider like the wide receiver room as a whole, there's 16 of them. Not all of them are, let's say, viable options. And when you consider the upperclassmen that are there, there's only 5 of them. There are only 5 players that are juniors or redshirt juniors. The rest are sophomores or younger. So when you have guys beyond Chris Brazzell Jr., they're either young, they're newcomers, or they haven't done enough for you to even know their name. And when we maybe take a deeper dive into that roster, you can probably refresh your memory and be like, okay, well, what about Amari Jefferson, the Alabama transfer, who had a lot of, kind of talk when he made that transfer to Tennessee, but he's at best an unknown commodity because he was injured all last season and his lone year with the Alabama Crimson Tide. So when you look to somebody that can help return Tennessee's offense to what Vol fans are really hoping they could get used to and enjoy year to year, Chris Brazzell Jr. is your answer, especially in the position that he plays within the wide receiver scheme, being able to stretch the field, have various routes, the catch and run kind of vibe that we can get from Chris Brazzell Jr. So the fact that he's at all involved in practice 3 weeks out from the start of the regular season is huge news. Again, top 5 things you probably would want to hear starting in fall camp. And when we consider what happened last year, where he, of course, did play all 13 games, he started 9 of them. He hauled in 29 catches, 333 yards, a pair of touchdowns. But a season high in catches per game or in a game was 5. Tennessee will absolutely need Chris Brazzell to carry more of the load this season. Again, returning to maybe a more explosive offense or being able to attack a little bit more of the middle of the field, get some shallow crossing routes going. Chris Brazzell's probably the guy that you're going to want to go to. And when you talk about being able to use last year's experience to build off of that, he's your only guy that can do that. And when you consider the quarterback competition that is continuing to evolve, as Josh Heupel's a little tongue-in-cheek and says he's not going to name a starter, he's not going to switch reps. The reps that Chris Brazzell Jr. received as we were there for the open periods of practice, it was from the 4th string quarterback, one of the freshman quarterbacks. The one snap we saw, or the one rep we saw, the snap was dropped or it was low, and then the pass was low and at Chris Brazzell's feet, so he didn't catch that. The next one was another crossing route type of run. He was able to catch that one, but again, at half speed, just maybe getting used to it. He does have a full sleeve and a brace on one of his legs. So of course, him getting to work back, but you have those game reps, but you also need reps with the actual starting quarterback, whoever that is, 1, 2, or 3. And to see that the reps that he was getting, not necessarily being those 3 guys, not to say that he didn't get them later in practice, but it's vital that hey, it's a good sign that he's back, but you absolutely need to get him back in the mix. And it's even more vital when you consider the number 2, number 3 guy, right? Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley. They have been in and out of injury, almost kind of exchanging who's going to be injured what day. And right now, it's Mike Matthews who's the most healthy of the pair. Braylon Staley wasn't involved in the scrimmage, and I didn't really see him back out on the practice field again today. I did see Mike Matthews, who continued to be in a red jersey, still going through the team drills and, running routes with the team. And he had a couple of good routes that he ran earlier in practice. But being able to get those guys in the mix who, of course, last year, had so much frustration that they were not in the mix at all, probably stunted a little bit of their growth as far as, again, getting those game reps. So for them to continue to have to split reps with, that first, second, or third guy, which hopefully at this point it's just between Merklinger and Aguilar, they're able to build a little bit better connection between all of those guys. And I think, while Braylon Staley continues to work his way back. What we do know is that he spends countless hours in Kelsey Pope's office, the wide receiver coach. And I did have an episode on that. If you missed it, let this be a chance to turn on your notifications so you don't miss them. So your top three guys at best are still injured, right? Like Chris Brownslow's at half speed. Matthews is in a red jersey. Maybe I need better eyesight, but I didn't see Staley out there. So what does that mean for your team? You have to play young wide receivers. Even if all three of those guys were healthy, they're seldom probably going to take all of the snaps. They're not going to be out there every single rep and every single snap of every single game. So you're going to need to have a little bit more depth. And your depth is young players more than likely. And I think the two guys that they'll likely want to go to, or should maybe go to, depending on if you consider how much they did in the orange and white game and what they've considered throughout practice here, is you would look to Riddarius Jackson and Travis Smith. That's a really enticing pair. Like, they have done so much together to continue to push each other. And I'm not, you can't convince me that they're not additionally like hungry, that they're not like now starving because they see these injuries, and you have to kind of look at that as an opportunity for additional playing time. And there's no way that that does not add additional motivation for those two freshman wide receivers, that there maybe is this chance that they could get some playing time this season. And while Heupel doesn't like to do that, right? Like, he didn't do it the 4 or 5 stars last year with Matthews and Staley and all that frustration that happened. And even in those non-conference games, they were not really that involved. Of course, Staley had some reps in the first round of the college football playoff game. You want more of that for these younger guys. That's probably the best way to develop them. You still have those softer non-conference games that will be there. They're not as soft as maybe last year, but you absolutely want to get them involved early. And with Riddarius Jackson and Travis Smith, who had a great orange and white game, they also like spend a lot of time at the jugs machine, like 100, 150 catches, and they're constantly together, constantly working, trying to get each other better. They're pushing each other every practice. Those are the next two guys that I would go to. But if we're being honest, I also like, we don't need to like totally freak out either. I know a ton of people are freaking out about like what all of this means. And I guess like a quick side note too, like considering Boo Carter, is he going to be somebody that they can supplement in theirs offense? Maybe they'll do that a little bit more than they initially thought now that some of these injuries are coming up. But because of the own problems that Boo Carter has created for himself, even back before those problems were really a thing, it was kind of asked, like, will he be a Travis Hunter? And the answer was, like, he's defense first. It wasn't a no. It was, he's a defense first guy. He knows that's his responsibility. He knows that's his main role. That continues to be, like, the theme of talk. So if there's this level of excitement that it's going to be something close to, like, a 50-50 ratio, it's not.
I'm VFL Chris Brown. Experience the VW brand proudly being produced in the great state of Tennessee. Harper Volkswagen is a proud partner of Tennessee Athletics. Go Vols.
Even considering all of that, and that's where I'm like, let's relax. I really do try to stay at like a level 5 because there's no sense in like spiking cortisol levels when like it really is not. It's not that big. It's not that deep. Maybe it ends up being a big deal, but like at this point, let's all relax. Honestly, I don't see how the offense and the production that Tennessee gets from his wide receivers could take a significant dip from what we've seen the last couple of seasons, specifically 2024 and 2023, where a lot of the production relatively came from other positions other than the wide receiver room. Like, you could go to last year. There were only a couple of games, I think 3, where they passed for more than 200 yards in conference play. The two best games came against Kentucky and Vanderbilt. When you break that down even further, like who was involved in the receiving game when you consider wide receiver, running back, and tight end rooms. Okay, the last 2 seasons, the tight end room, the running back room were heavily involved in the pass game. You could go to last season where Miles Kitselman, Ethan Davis, and Dylan Sampson were 4th, 8th, and 9th on the list and receptions or receiving yards. They combined for about 18.3% of the total yardage, or just a little over 300 yards of the total passing game. You could go to 2023 when it's McAllen, Castle, Sampson, Jalen Wright. They combined for 17.8% of the total yardage and the total receiving yards. 2022 is probably the biggest difference where a lot of the receiving yards went to actual receivers and not necessarily to other position groups, but they still did heavily use the tight end and running back room, combining for nearly 15%. So when you consider that, maybe by the end of it, those other positions like the tight end room and the running back room, maybe they see a greater share of the receiving yards and it's maybe closer to 20%. But let's keep it on the tight end room. I really could see Tennessee utilizing its tight end room similar to how they did in 2022. And maybe while the total yardage percentage is its lowest of the last 3 seasons, they certainly use them a lot more in like bulk yardage and use them more in like those red zone opportunities. I could see a lot of that happening. We even kind of got a sneak peek of that in the orange and white game with Jack Van Dorselaer. I could see that happening within this crew. Like Miles Kitselman has looked pretty good in fall camp when they get him involved in those passing drills. Ethan Davis actually looked pretty good today too. He had some like curl routes that he was running and he looked pretty good. But I think the way that they've continued to develop, and I think that's why I'm not too like high or low on like Tennessee's going to take this massive step back. It's because of how they utilize like all of their skill positions to get involved in the passing game. Like they all will be involved with, catching some footballs from whoever the starting quarterback ends up being. I just think they'll rely on the tight end room a little bit more. Maybe they'll pull away from utilizing the running backs as much, maybe just save them for those like last second checkdowns. But I think they could really see the tight end room really get involved in a wider amount of routes instead of just handing it out into the flat. I really could see maybe more of them trying to attack the middle of the field with those tight ends, maybe kind of more like a Travis Kelce kind of vibe from the tight ends this season. So I think even when you pair it with like Tennessee having that only option of playing wide receivers, I think they're just going to have to get a little bit more involved with the tight ends if they want to be a productive offense this season. I don't think they can afford to do what they did last season and still get as many wins because of how the league has continued to strengthen itself, right? Like I don't know if Tennessee has strengthened itself as much as its opponents have this season. That's why whatever Tennessee did last season on offense, I don't think that's going to result in as many wins. You can't keep continuing to put it all on your defense. But having Chris Braslow out on the practice field today is a huge sign for Tennessee. They absolutely need him. I still think Braylon Staley is going to be your breakout player if he hopefully gets healthy. There's not been any talk or mention that he'll miss playing time. And then Mike Matthews and all of the hype that he's had off season, you certainly hope he's able to deliver. It's good to see that even in the red jersey, he's still, going through these drills, going through the routes, and then getting the tight ends involved. I still think it could be a successful offense. Even if I don't sound super convinced in my tone, I am convinced that they'll probably have some decent success. They just might have to get a little bit more creative, especially when you're trying to help elevate the quarterback room as that competition continues. But I'll have highlights from day 1 of week 3 fall camp back over on the homepage, or I'll link it here in the description so you guys can enjoy that after or before this episode. I'll talk to you guys later this week.